Good morning. How is everybody? I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for asking that. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad God's blessed us. Chance to study more of His Word and be together as His people. This is good. This is what we ought to be doing. Everyone should be doing this, but especially His children on the Lord's Day. Ezekiel is the book. I gave you a little bit of homework last time. I said it would be good to read Jeremiah 40 and 41, and maybe you did that. And if you didn't, I'm going to try to give a brief. I'm going to try to cover it.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So we're in chapter number 5, and we've already in chapter number 4. He is starting to act out these prophecies, right? Well, let me say this. I guess better way to put it is that he is told by God that he is to act out these prophecies. I always read these as like he's actually doing it as it's being told to us, but I certainly think he actually literally played these things out. Like he actually built a little city on a clay tablet. He actually pretended to siege it and things like that. Okay, and we talked about that, and then in 5 he starts to do another one where he's acting out, where he's cutting his hair and he's taking a third of it and he's throwing it in a part of the city in the fire. He lights a little fire in the city, makeshift city, and then he throws a little bit over there. A third of the hair he cuts off, right, and he chops it up with a knife, and we talked about what that represented. And then, do you remember what he did with the other third of the hair? So he throws some into the fire, chops some of it up, and then with the other third, he throws it up to the wind, right? And of course, the wind's going to take it. And I think he actually chased after it with the knife, and so that would represent some were fleeing Jerusalem, and then he takes part of that 1/3, and what he does, he tucks it in his pocket somewhat, right? It says that he sews it in or he puts it in his, where exactly is that? What is it? Yeah, binds it in his garment, right? And what could that be? I don't think he actually busted out the needle and thread, but he probably would have put it in some kind of pocket, which means that some people were actually going to live. They were going to survive the destruction of Jerusalem at that time. And some were not. And he gets to talking about verse number 4 there at the very end. From there, what says, take some of them, throw them into the midst of the fire, burn them in the fire. So some who flee, who were taken with the wind, were going to be pursued. They weren't going to make it. And then he says, from there a fire will go out into all the house of Israel. And I was saying that I think that this is probably Jeremiah 40 and 41. So what happens in those chapters? So Nebuchadnezzar, sends his army. He comes into Jerusalem and they destroy it. And a lot of people die and few people escape. So from the survivors, Nebuchadnezzar makes a man named Gedaliah the governor. It's pretty much it's not even a place anymore, right? It's not a kingdom anymore. You would say it's a defeated province of Babylon now. And Babylon owns it. It's Babylon's territory. And so he puts this guy named Gedaliah in charge as governor. And Gedaliah is telling the people, hey, you know what the best thing we should do is? We should probably just be good Babylonians now. We should be good subjugated people, because God's gonna, I would have Gedaliah would have been, you have to imagine he was trying to stay faithful. Look, all right, God's gonna take care of us. Don't worry, we're gonna stay here. We're gonna no more rebellions. We're not trying to bring, the brunt of the Babylonian army on us again, because then there will truly be nobody left. And a lot of people were hearing of this. A lot of Jews in neighboring countries who had already been scattered, they were hearing of this. And you read, I think it's chapter 40 of Jeremiah, where they all start coming back. They're coming back to the land in great numbers. But there was a fellow Jew named Now, who read it? Did you read it? What was the guy's name who did not like Gedaliah's idea? It's a famous, kind of a famous name. It's been used in the Bible before. You remember? His name was Ishmael. So this Jew named Ishmael did not like this. Because, you would have some thinking, well, no, we're supposed to be independent. We can't let Babylon do this to us, and and really, I guess I don't know what you would call it, over patriotic or whatever. Maybe he was just a regular patriot, but he didn't like the idea of this, and so he goes and he kills Gedaliah, and he kills Gedaliah's supporters, and he kills some people, and he actually tries to take his fellow Jews captive to the land of the Ammonites, which was bonkers. Ishmael, I have to believe that Ishmael probably thought that what he was doing was right, Oh, we can't do this. We got to be strong. We got to fight to the very end, that kind of thing. But Jeremiah comes along. He says what Ishmael was doing was evil. And so that's in chapter 41:11. That was wrong for what Ishmael was doing. And the big thing was that Ishmael killed some Babylonians as well as his own people. So obviously that wasn't going to sit well when that news got back to Nebuchadnezzar, right? And so the Jews, they were scared of this, and that caused a lot of them to go to Egypt, including Jeremiah. I think Jeremiah ended up going against his will and fleeing to Egypt. And so you have all this turmoil going on, right? That sounds like just a lot going on in a short period of time. I think that is what Ezekiel was talking about, this fire going out into all the house of Israel after the destruction of the temple, after the people died in the siege, and from famine and from pestilence, and after they were killed with the sword, and after they were chased down and hunted down from the remaining survivors, a fire was going to go out into all the house. That sounds like a fire to me. I think that's what could it not be? Could it be something else that we don't know about? Yep. Could it be something that I don't know about? Probably, but I think that's that fits to me. Any questions about that, Jim? Did you have something?
Yeah, Ishmael, he was trying to do it. He's trying to do it his way rather than God's way. That's the reason
Yeah.
His lust after his own heart. And the way I took it when I read it.
Yeah.
He was trying to do it his way, and the other was trying to do it God's way, and God's way always wins.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's a theme. I guess that's a lesson that will never get old, right? It should be God's way first. Okay. Let me get to. All right. So we're on chapter 5, verse number 5. Let me get there real quick. Boom, boom. Here we go. So let's read 5 through 8. He says of Ezekiel 5. Thus says the Lord God. This. So he starts explaining what's going on. If we didn't pick it up, we're just so smart, we already picked it up. No, verse 5. Yeah, this is Jerusalem. I'm telling you, this is Jerusalem. These are the people. I have set her in the midst of the nations and the countries all around her. She has rebelled against my judgments by doing wickedness more than the nations, and against my statutes more than the countries that are all around her. For they have refused my judgments. They have not walked in my statutes. See, a lot of this sounds familiar from Isaiah, doesn't it? Therefore, thus says the Lord God, because you have multiplied disobedience more than the nations that are all around you, have not walked in my statutes, nor kept my judgments, nor even done according to the judgments of the nations that are all around you. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, indeed even I, am against you, and will execute judgments in your midst in the sight of the nations. This idea of them being in the middle of the nations, Israel was the spiritual centerpiece of, we would say, the world. You want to get technical with it, say the civilized world, but I would say, spiritual centerpiece of the world, because that was God, the one true God. They had the one true God. Nobody else did. Spiritual centerpiece, right? So everything from there, from Israel, from that people should have radiated out and been this beacon of light, right? We would even say geographically, if you can picture Israel on a map, where it is geographically, it was at the time the center of the known world, right? I mean, they were in a really good location to go all out in all directions and to take the one true God with them wherever they went. And they blew it.
That wasn't my accident. They were there in that location.
Yeah, you have to think there was some providence of God, right? In having them right where they were. Sure. And yes, there was a sea. They had the Mediterranean Sea right on the side of them, right on the west of them. But it's not like people didn't know what ships were in those days. A lot of trade going on. Read about Solomon, see how much trade was going on with ships. But so you had Israel, Jerusalem specifically, and then more specifically the temple where God's dwelling place was, right? That was to be this light for the rest of the world to be able to come to know the one true God of heaven, and they blew it. They blew it, and they failed not because it wasn't possible for them to be the beacon, not that it wasn't possible that they could reach so many other nations with the truth. It's just because they refused to obey God, and that's what God says here. You just refused. You're even, and he's like, you're even worse than the people around you, and they didn't even have me. So their sins, because of where they were, because of the opportunities they had, because of the privileges they had, God looked at their sins as especially wicked. Very wicked, more than the other nations, because they blew it. And we get this idea kind of carries over in the New Testament when you read like 2 Peter chapter number 2, verse 20 and 21. Let me read it real quick in case you can't think of it. For if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are again entangled in them and overcome. Right? So they've got out of it, they know better, and then they jump right back into it. He says the latter end is worse for them than the beginning, because you knew better. You had the truth and you blew it. It would have been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than having known it to turn from the holy commandment delivered to them. Well, that ought to give every Christian some pause about some of the decisions that we make and the potential pitfalls that are in front of us, and or we take sin lightly and things like that. What I got up there, Luke 12. This is going to be worse for Christians who fall away than it is for someone who never became a Christian. That kind of leads into the idea gives some credence to the idea of that there's going to be different punishments different punishments in hell. I mean, that's something I guess people go back and forth over that. Like when Jesus says, it's going to be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon, or more tolerable for Sodom than it's going to be for you. He was telling some cities. Well, what does that mean? Well, they had the Christ, and they were rejected. They did sinful things, and they suffered, and they're lost. They died lost. But they didn't have the Christ sitting right before them. You've got the Christ sitting right before you. You've got the truth right before you, and you're denying. He said it's going to be better for Tyre and Sidon than it is going to be for you. Well, that tells me that there's some kind of, it's going to be worse. Hell is going to be worse for some people, right? Luke 12. 47. And that servant who knew his master's will, so he had the truth, he knew it, and did not prepare himself or do according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. But he who did not know, yet committed things deserving of stripes, shall be beaten with few. To everyone to whom much is given, to him much will be required. To whom has been committed, of him they will ask more. Right? So that's not something that Jesus just came. This is this kind of, that's in this text that we just read in Ezekiel. And so what happened? Israel was punished very, very severely. We're going to get into that in just a second. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, we could use Israel right there, the way they went out. And instead of standing for truth, they took on the ways of the people around them.
Yeah. Became like everybody else instead of having everybody else become like them. So
the church today gets the same way. We've got all these opportunities to spread the word, and then when we get out into the world, we fall back.
Yeah.
Like they are.
Yeah.
So it's telling us that there is going to be a punishment for you.
Yeah, it's a real, like, it's pretty easy for us to make the application, right? Like, all of us can make it, like, yeah, we can see how this applies to us today, right?
Them now for not doing it, they didn't have it years ago, we did, so how bad they're going to be on us.
Yeah, right, yeah. All right, so 9 and 11, he says, and I will do among you what I have never done, and the like of which I will never do again because of all your abominations. Therefore, fathers shall eat their sons in your midst, and sons shall eat their fathers. I will execute judgments on you, and all of you who remain I will scatter into the winds. Therefore, as I live, says the Lord God, surely you, because you have defiled my sanctuary with all your detestable things and with all your abomination, therefore I will also diminish you. My eye will not spare, nor will I have any pity. So, I mean, verse 10 is pretty bad sounding, don't you think? When y'all read that, what did you think about that? Have you ever read something like that before? So this is, I mean, this is cannibalism, isn't it?
In the worst form.
Pretty scary words Ezekiel's got for these people. No wonder, maybe that's why he spent 7 days not saying anything, because he knew he was going to have to say stuff like this. And when he says stuff like this, to the Jew who knew the old law, who knew the Torah, they would know that God had spoken about this before. Then you go back to Leviticus and Deuteronomy says the same thing. And then at the same time that Ezekiel is going to have to be preaching this kind of thing, Jeremiah is doing the same. And you can read Jeremiah saying something very similar in Jeremiah 19 and verse 9. Remember, Ezekiel's over here, Jeremiah's back home, trying to get the people right over there, and Ezekiel's trying to get the people right over here in captivity. This actually took place, we'll read one of these. This actually took place already in the northern kingdom, in Samaria. So let's go to 2 Kings, and I know this is probably not like the greatest passage you want to hear read, but verse 25. Well, let's start at verse 24. And it happened after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his army and went up and besieged Samaria. So Samaria was kind of like the Jerusalem of Judah. Samaria was the capital of the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom. Verse 25, and there was a great famine in Samaria, and indeed they besieged it. So they shut off the city until a donkey's head was sold for 80 shekels of silver, 1/4 of a cab of dove droppings for 5 shekels of silver. Why would you be buying dove droppings? Verse 26, then as the king of Israel was passing by on the wall, a woman cried out to him, saying, help my lord, O king. And he said, if the Lord does not help you, where can I find help for you? From the threshing floor or the winepress? King said, what's troubling you? Verse 28, she answered, this woman said to me, give your son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and ate him. And I said to her on the next day, give your son that we may eat him, but she has hidden her son. And now it happened, and then the king tore his clothes. He just couldn't believe what he was hearing. Well, that's pretty bad. Well, I mean, what the woman did was bad, but I mean, just to have them in that position was That's awful. And in Lamentations, which is written, it's kind of like a funeral song for the city of Jerusalem after Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed it. Babylon came and destroyed it. He says the same thing. Jeremiah says, yep, that happened here as well. Lamentations 2, Lamentations 4. So God's prophets, Moses got it right way back in Leviticus, Deuteronomy. Jeremiah got it right. Ezekiel got it right. Unfortunately, he wished some of these things did not come to pass, but they did. And so we think, well, verse 9 is probably proverbial. Because Jesus would say something the same. Jesus would say the same thing about Jerusalem in the first century over Matthew 24. And so if number 9 is literal, where he says, God says, this is something that's never happened, it will never happen again. Well, Jesus then got it wrong, because he kind of says the same thing in Matthew 24. So we take 9 proverbial, but then we say, well, we must take 10 proverbial too. Like 10 probably just figurative, like it's just going to be really bad. They're not actually going to be eating people. But actually, we know that that happened. Not only did it happen with the northern kingdom, but in Jeremiah, and now Ezekiel here is talking to the southern kingdom, right? We know that that happened. Jeremiah confirms it. So pretty bad. Pretty bad stuff going on. Oh, where sin will take a people, I bet you. Most people think, well, it won't go that far. Go ahead.
Are we to assume that the reason they were doing that was out of desperation because of how severely they were being punished in the sense of like famine and
Yeah, it wasn't an idol sacrifice thing.
Yeah,
it was more like we're starving.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear these stories, right? Like plane crashes in the Arctic or something, and I think a movie's been made out of it where they have to like do that kind of thing, eat the dead bodies or whatever to survive. And so, yeah, it's like desperation. It's hard I cannot get it. I feel like I would not do that, like I would just rather die.
Don't ever say never.
But how do I know? Like, I don't know. None of us know that kind of desperation. And so and that just ought to tell us, well, it's obvious that people do this. And this just ain't biblical stuff. Like, we've got pretty modern stories where people have done the same thing. And so you're just talking about awful, awful, awful place to be in your head. And God is saying it never happened. It's not like they got on the plane and an accident happened. This was purposely done. They did it on purpose. It's like they chose this. They chose this. They were even warned this is going to happen, and they chose it anyways.
Taking the life of your own child versus eating the dead, that's two totally different, scenarios. I would rather starve to death than take the life of my child.
Yeah.
So that I can live.
She hit her the next day.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Even in, let's see.
That shows that she didn't love her child, that she, I guess, just seen him as a crutch.
Maybe so. I don't know. That's tough.
Well, you see what's going on around you. You see other people doing it. It's just like if they jump off a bridge, does that mean you're going to? Well, are you going to follow the leader? And that's what they were doing. They were following what others were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it come to one that said, I ain't going to do this, ain't doing that.
Yeah, Lamentations 4 says the same thing. I don't think it's 2:10. Let me correct that. There's 2 spots in Lamentations where, and 2:10 is not one of them. I don't see it there, unless I'm looking at it and I just don't see it, which that happens sometimes. But listen to 4:10. There's another spot in here, but 4:10 says, the hands of the compassionate women have cooked their own children. They became food for them in the destruction of the daughter of my people.
Hey, your body gets.
So I don't know. It's like like they did everything they could not to do it until, I mean, I don't know, it's just hard to put yourself in their heads, you know? And that's it, but it just shows you how awful it is. And this is where sin takes people. It's terrible. Go ahead, Jim, then I'll get called.
As Shirley said, it's after your body does without so long, it changes the chemical imbalance in your head.
Oh, sure,
You
yeah.
never know what's gonna happen.
Well, no, dehydration will
Yeah,
basically
like-
make you crazy,
Yeah,
just
so
about.
You can imagine it might not have been there to begin with, it'll start to stay.
Yeah, no telling it. It's
But it happens.
the point is that this is some terrible stuff here, and they did it to themselves, basically. Colleen.
One more component to this, I don't know, hopefully someone will find this as interesting as I do, but I heard it explained once not too long ago, actually, that the way that we think about children and protecting them and caring for them, that we think about today, like as a general society, we value the lives of children, and we protect them and care for them, and as such, any violence against them we consider to be the worst of crimes. But I think what I heard explained was that this is actually a modern and Christian way of thinking, like when, so like when Jesus was teaching about how precious children were, to us, that's like, obviously, duh, of course.
But that was kind of like
that was
unheard of back then?
Yeah.
That's what I heard it explained, that in older civilizations and at this time, like, there was no family planning or you just kept having children as long as.
Yeah, because you always just make more, right? Something happens.
Just make some more children. So children, this is what I heard explained anyway, that
Sure,
children
yeah.
were not prized and valued and considered as precious as we consider them today. And not that, obviously, that it's still an abomination. There's just no excuse for these horrible things. But I'm just saying, like, if we just maybe put ourselves in this mindset that it was just a different way of thinking. And if you think about like all the child sacrifice that was going on,
right?
I mean, in these other cultures, like it's just not that far off.
Yeah.
And of course we could come up with all sorts of physical justifications if you're starving and desperate, why they would do that. But I think there's another layer, another component to it where they just thought differently than we do.
Yeah. And if we want to try to paint paint these people in a little better light, it could have been that their child, they ate the dead anyways, they could have been like, well, because you think that if the mother's malnourished, starving, then the baby's not going to last long either, right? So, especially a very young baby. So, could have been that they had already passed, and then it's still just a grotesque way. Go ahead.
Excuse me. In Lamentations 2:10 there, it mentions about the sackcloth, and then in verse 30 of 2 Kings 6, it mentions it again where he talks about tearing his clothes and he has sackcloth on underneath.
Oh yeah, that's the idea of mourning.
Significance, is that like for mourning?
It's just like if I were to go out, if I heard some bad news and I just, I ripped my suit off, and then I put on my old nasty rough shirt. And that's the sign of mourning. Yeah. I put on the most uncomfortable thing I can because that's reflecting my mindset.
So when he carries he's already got the sackcloth on underneath in there. I assume it's what that meant is like. He was already in a state of mourning, I think.
He could have been, he could have been because, the siege was ongoing. Yeah.
It said, behold, he had sackcloth beneath on his body.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, and I guess.
In his mind, he was already there, like, okay.
Yeah. And I guess you imagine putting on a potato sack on your skin. That's gonna be like pretty itchy, right? It's gonna bother you. But I think that's the idea why I did such a thing. Yeah. So yeah, some people's already. I didn't catch that actually. That's good. Any more, Jim?
Back to what Colleen was saying, back in this country not long ago, that people would have kids, they would trade them off when they're 10, 11-year-old, they'd raise them as stock.
Oh.
I mean, you look back to the history, that traders come by and buy a farmer's daughter just to so he'd have companionship out on the trail.
Yeah.
It's livestock in this country, I mean, it's not been that long ago.
Yeah. Yes, that's interesting culture. that we had.
Working with that.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I think that's why Christianity is set apart and different, because we do value,
Mhm.
Christians wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because we value children.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I would hope we would, yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's go through the rest of the chapter, starting in verse 12. So he's kind of explaining, he's getting at this the one-third prophecy, we already read about with the hair and whatnot. So he's getting a little more detail here. So let's see if we got it right. 1/3 of you, he says, shall die in the pestilence, be consumed with famine in your midst. 1/3 shall fall by the sword all around you, and I will scatter another third to all the winds, and I will draw a sword after them, so they'll be chased. Thus shall my anger be spent, and I will cause my fury to rest upon them, and I will be avenged. And they shall know that I, the Lord, have spoken it in my zeal when I have spent my fury upon them. Moreover, I will make you a waste and a reproach among the nations that are all around you in the sight of all who pass by. So it shall be a reproach, a taunt, a lesson, and an astonishment to the nations that are all around you when I execute judgments among you in anger and in fury and in furious rebukes. I, the Lord, have spoken. And I send against them the terrible arrows of famine, which shall be for destruction, which I will send to destroy you. I will increase the famine upon you, cut off your supply of bread. So I will send against you famine and wild beasts, and they will bereave you. Pestilence and blood shall pass through you, and I will bring a sword against you. I, the Lord, have spoken. Pretty awful. Rough language here to hear. And again, imagine being in Israel's shoes and having to tell this to your own people. You notice in verse 14, he says that God is saying, I will be avenged. I will be avenged, as if that God has been wronged. And I want you to see that God, look how God takes, look how personal God took his people's sins. He took it personally. They were committing sins against each other and committing sins against their children and nations and whatnot. But God said, basically, I'm going to be avenged because you have wronged me. And this idea also carries over into the New Testament when you see Jesus coming to Saul in Acts chapter 9. And do you remember what Jesus said when he appeared to him on the road to Damascus? Saul, why are you persecuting? Why are you persecuting me? And you could think Saul would have been justified in saying, no, Lord. I'm hurting these people, the church. Oh, well, Jesus took it personally, right? Because those are his people. And God gets, to the unbelief of some religious people, God gets very, very angry. We all want to talk about we don't want to think about, most folks don't want to think about the anger of God, the severity of God. They all want to talk about his goodness, how great he is, and gracious and merciful. And boy, I mean, those make for some good sermons, and aren't we thankful for that? I just preached on how great God was over at Crandall. And, one point I did not use was how angry he gets. I use righteousness and all of these and gracious and all these other good things. But it's not like we ignore the severity side of God. And that's Romans 11:22. the goodness and the severity of God. But the great thing about it, God's anger, is that he never gets angry when he shouldn't. He never just pops off. All of a sudden, God's angry and we don't even know why. She'll never say that. No one has ever said that. And I mean, boy, I wish we could learn how to do that. Never get angry when we shouldn't. Angry is justified sometimes, but not all the time, you know. So that's one good thing about it. And I guess we probably would never pick this up. This positive note, there is a positive note from this passage. It's not that he gets angry, it's that it's where he says in verse 13, my anger be spent. Thus shall my anger be spent. And I guess the one positive thing out of here maybe is that God doesn't stay angry forever. And we're happy about that. That God he gets angry when it's necessary, and he takes care of what needs to be taken care of, and then it's over. And the fact that he doesn't stay angry forever is the reason why there was a remnant. And there was a reason why, and that remnant came to, and went on to produce the Christ, Jesus, who became the Christ, the Messiah, and then the good news keeps going on after that, right? Go ahead, Tom.
Finally, personally to us, and so that God doesn't stay angry forever. Once we repent of our sins and we're forgiven, God remembers them no more.
Right, yeah.
They are personal when we sin against his commandments.
Sure, yeah.
Turn away.
And the consequences may still remain, but God's not going to hold our souls accountable for it, right? Not going to be held against us in the day of judgment, which is a very nice thing. Well, I mean, nice is not really the way to put it. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing, right? And we're thankful to God for that. Now, chapters 6 and 7 kind of go together. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, unless you guys want to, which is totally fine. We're going to have to do this next time. Next week. We're out of time today, but it speaks of idolatry. Very familiar. It's going to be very familiar to you. It speaks of idolatry, and then the judgment that follows because of that idolatry. That's kind of 6 and 7. So there's some little nuggets, good nuggets we'll try to pull out of there. And then and 8, 9, 10, and 11 kind of go together as well, but you know, we'll get there. Okay, so we'll start with what a great place to start on. Right at the beginning of the chapter. There's no way I can forget that. All right. Thanks everybody for your attention and your comments, and we'll pick it up next week.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad you're here. It's good for us to be together on this Lord's Day. Colossians chapter 1 and verse 28 says, him we preach, warning every man and teaching every man in all wisdom, that we may present every man perfect in Christ Jesus. Over in Matthew 28 and verse 20, we're told that we need to be teaching others to observe those things that Jesus Christ has commanded. So that would include things like purity, holiness, godliness, things like that. And the list goes on and on, right? And so when it comes to teaching or discussing this particular subject today, how would you do it if you were in my shoes? Certainly there is some warning here. There's many sins connected with pornography, and so it's a right thing to talk about. People need to see the dangers in it. There's some things that you probably don't even know about it, just how bad it really is. Well, my goal today is to correct that. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, probably going to be uncomfortable. Given the fact that it's so prevalent, if there's somebody that, whether it's here or whether it's anyone listening to me, that is struggling with this particular sin and needs to get out of it, then I hope that this would move them in that direction. So that's what this is about. I think it's a subject that people constantly dismiss. I think a lot of folks are going to say, yes, it's immoral, we hate it, but more and more individuals and more households and families are acting like it doesn't exist. And this has to be the case because pornography use is not declining, it's rising. And more people, especially young people, are viewing pornography. You know, the word originally meant it only referred to sexual writings or books with, you know, with that nature, books of that kind. Porno and then graphy, right? Porn writing, fornicate, the idea of fornicating, and then sexually explicit writings. That's kind of what it was. But of course, it has rocketed past that to include everything that we know it does today. So much pornography is being uploaded to the internet that if you were to watch every video that is uploaded back to back, you were to watch it in just back to back in just 1 year, that's uploaded in 1 year, it would take you 170 years to watch it. And that's just from one website. And that's not including the images. That's how much of this stuff is flooding onto the internet every day and every year. If you talk to some people about this, because they might not struggle with it or they don't really know a lot about it, they almost can't believe, they won't believe you how prevalent it is. And this includes parents denying that their children could be possibly viewing it, or husbands and wives denying that, you know, one of their spouses may be viewing it. And it's this kind of willful blindness that contributes to a lot of people thinking that, well, pornography addiction is not really as bad as it. Can't be that bad, right? And sometimes, especially with parents, grandparents, or guardians, you know, it's not a willful blindness. Sometimes it is deliberately ignoring the fact that their children are engaging in such things. And, you know, if it were up to me, that would be classified as child abuse. And that would be something that would be a criminal activity that would carry heavy consequences. So I guess you don't want me running for office. I'd probably get assassinated, I think. I would be killed, I think. But pornography is that bad. It is ruining lives, it is destroying marriages, it is killing families, and people are losing their souls over it. The latest statistics show that, and I'm gonna have a lot of these, 78% of US men, 44% of US women consume some form of pornography at least on a monthly basis. Then you have, that's a lot of people, and then you have statistics that tell you that it's even worse, that the numbers are higher than this, which is crazy. The average age of exposure to it is only 12 years old. And I know for a fact that it goes much younger than that. That's just the average age. 58% of teenagers are accidentally exposed to it. So it's not like all of our children are running out looking for it. How evil can I get? What's the nastiest thing that I can get on my phone or look at, talk about, joke about? They're accidentally exposed to it. But nonetheless, that means that they are first viewing pornography during puberty, which shapes how they view every single thing about human sexuality. And remember, that's God-given. Human sexuality is supposed to be a wonderful, beautiful thing. It's God-given. We got it there for a reason. And boy, look what we've done to it. We have messed it up so bad. And of course, this should be no surprise. Young people who view pornography have higher rates of anxiety and depression. And you know where those two things can lead. Among people who, in the United States, who claim Christianity, now, obviously, when I talk about that, kind of say it like that, you know, we're using the word Christianity or Christian very loosely because so many people would call themselves Christian when they're not, they're very far from it. But among people who claim Christianity, 75% of men and 40% of women, and that number's rising, consume pornography with some kind of regularity, whether it be once a day or once a week or once every couple of months. There's an older poll, this is back in 2016. teenagers were asked what is immoral, what's like the top 10 immoral things. They listed stealing, cheating, lying, which makes sense. But they listed overeating, over consuming electricity and water, and not recycling as more immoral than watching pornography. Married couples who introduce pornography into their relationships are twice as likely to end up getting a divorce. They think, we need to spice things up. We need to add some fire to our marriage. Things are going bad. Things are going the wrong way. Well, let's add some pornography, and it don't work. Don't work. You gotta go to the Bible to make your marriage better, not away from it. So on and on and on and on we could go with disturbing things like this. So I'm not sure I know anybody in their right mind who would try to make the case that pornography is somehow good or useful or, oh, it's harmless. That person has no clue what they're talking about, and I would listen to anything they would say. Lots of people out there, and good people, who are publicly bringing awareness to this problem and all the other sins that are associated with it, and I'm gonna share some of those with you. They'll bring out all the negative things about it, and I like that. It's good, and I want those people to succeed in their missions. But a lot of them will not go as far as say that it's immoral. They will not step out and say, well, those who produce it ethically are wrong. They've had, ethical pornography, right? As if that makes it somehow better. They won't say that those people are wrong, nor will they say that it should be denounced across the board. And that's too bad, because every bit of it should be denounced. It is an evil, an absolute evil that no person should be involved with in any way. It is sin against God, and this is something that needs to be repented of. Well over half of pornography users confess to hating what they do. They hate it, they hate themselves for it, and they want to quit so badly, but they just don't know how to do it. Well, the good news is there are solutions, and I would say it's the kind of solutions that guarantee freedom from this sinful addiction. But just like with any addiction out there, it is going to be very hard. And here's the key: trying to overcome it alone is not going to work. If someone out there is telling themselves, all right, here's the day, I'm going to do it. It's over with, I'm going to do it. You will not succeed. You cannot do it alone. A person needs some form of community. You got to have accountability with this. And I've said 1,000 times before that there are so many reasons why God designed the church in the way that he did. He put us together. Human beings need each other to overcome the pitfalls of this world and help each other get to heaven. People are out there thinking that they're religious and they call themselves Christian, but they refuse to be a part of something like this. They refuse to be a part of a congregation who's trying to do what's right and be members of the Lord's church. And when you do not associate with like-minded people trying to go to heaven, you will struggle for your whole life and you will likely die lost. That is how important the church is, folks. Hopefully something said today is going to help move some folks in the right direction. So with all that being said, that's just the introduction. Let me give you 3 hard, very uncomfortable truths about this. Okay, so buckle up. Number 1, those who view it cannot hide it like they think they can. Now, of course, we know that nothing is hidden from God, and I try my best to get as much scripture in here as possible. I'll tell you, it was a little difficult, only because, I could probably give 2 more lessons about this, but just because of what I wanted to talk about today specifically. But Hebrews 4:13 basically tells us that absolutely nothing is hidden from God's sight. And every human being is going to be giving an account of their lives. What did I do? What did I say in my life? How did I act? What did my eyes purposely watch? And God has a way of bringing sins to light. Psalm 90 and verse number 8, the psalmist says, you, God, you have set our iniquities before you. It's like you have laid all of our sins out on the table, our secret sins. in the light of your countenance. Now, when you read verses like this, I get it. It don't seem to bother a lot of people. We're sitting in this environment and we're like, yeah, okay, man, that's a good verse. But boy, when we leave there, a lot of times we have problems applying these things and making changes in our minds, which results in changes in our lives. And so this doesn't seem to bother a lot of people. Oh, God sees everything. Well, if it really bothered us and if we really bought into it, well, we wouldn't be doing a lot of things. People would be doing a lot of things that they do, would they? I mean, Christians. So maybe this stuff is going to bother us. 1 in every 5 smartphone search queries are pornography related. 1 in every 5. How many things do you search a day? Well, imagine if, and God, I hope it's not the case, that 1 out of every 5 of those was pornography related. 35% of all internet downloads are pornography related. Now, I want to ask you, how do you think that somebody gets these numbers? How do you think people know this? Certainly, we're not saying that, you're not thinking that, well, somebody's just pulling those numbers out of thin air. No, everything you do on the internet is wide open. There's nothing you do on the internet, whether it's on your computer or on your phone, that is not trackable. And you think you can get all your VPNs and all of this and IP blockers and all of that. You don't think there's a way around that? Are you crazy? Let's say a user visits a pornography site. And there's about 3 sources that I use for a lot of this stuff. And if you want to know what they are, I'll absolutely give them to you. I think they're useful. They are bothersome, but I think they're useful. Let's say user, they go to a pornography site. Well, that site automatically picks up the person's internet provider address, called their IP. Everybody's got an IP when you go online. And so with that IP of yours, they can very likely get your zip code. With the zip code, they can probably estimate how much money you make. They estimate your income. And depending on what pictures and videos you're watching, they will figure out your sexual preference. They will figure out whether you're male or female. They'll know what language you speak. They'll know what browser you use, and on and on and on it goes. They learn so much information about you on these sites. And this is before someone would put their credit card information in there to buy something from them. Pornography users just cannot hide like they think they can. I listened to a certain young man talk about how easy it was to actually just spot somebody who habitually watches pornography. And of course, he was talking about his own struggles with it. He said after he would watch it, he would go into town, go to the store for groceries or whatever, and he would just feel like everybody was looking at him, as if everybody knew what he had just done. But he was so eaten up with guilt, so eaten up with shame, that he was like literally wearing it on his face and in his mannerisms, and he wasn't acting like he normally would, and he absolutely 100% literally stood out, and people noticed. It's really not hard to spot addiction. It really, if you know what you're looking for, I think even if you don't know what you're looking for, it's hard to spot that, man, something ain't right about that person. I think some people hide it better than others, but it does, a lot of times it is obvious. Take smokers, for example. I've always thought it's not funny, but it kind of is to me. Where smokers or people who dip seem like they try to hide what they do. And I just wonder, like, sometimes they believe that they got it down, like they really know that they're good at hiding it, because the signs of it, especially from someone, if you smoked before, if you dipped before, the signs are just, you're giving away, you're busted, whether it's said out loud or not. And, I would say addiction to porn is no different. Pornography, it's the words that people use, the things that they would talk about, the things they bring up in conversations, the things they laugh about, the way they act around women, the way they go quiet when a specific thing is mentioned, the way they carry themselves, etc., etc. I'm not so sure that there's a science to it, although body language is I don't know if it's a science, but that's a thing. Most people, I would say, though, are pretty quick to pick up on it. In Proverbs 23 and verse 7 says, it begins, for as a man thinks in his heart, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. The idea is like what goes in must come out. You can't hide who you truly are, no matter how great you are. I think pornography is, but it is the greatest secret sin that exists, but it's just not a secret as some might think it is. Here's hard truth number 2. Oh, already hopped in there. The pornography industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you're being used by it. They want to use us all, actually. The person who watches it is nothing but a number from which the industry wants to pull as much money as possible. And this industry will eat you up and spit you out. That's not the worst part, though. You've already seen it. There has been some study and some investigation into the relationship between pornography and transgenderism. Now, there's a guy named John Money, and if you want to look him up, see what he did, be warned. But the guy was an evil, evil person. He was a professor and psychologist at Johns Hopkins University, and he taught there for a long time. I think it was 1952 through 2006. And the fact that he's even stayed there so long tells you what a rotten university it is. But he did a lot of work, if you want to call it that, and his work was instrumental in normalizing a lot of the junk we see today, this socialized, socially constructed gender identity, where everyone can just be whatever they want to be, and where everyone's just supposed to accept it. His work was like the foundation for that, and a number of other ungodly things. He actually argued that young children should be shown, this is a direct quote, should be shown explicit pornography in order to assist them in their transition. Okay. One of our wonderful professors in the wonderful universities of our country. Fast forward a little bit, between 2014 and 2017, searches for transgender themed pornography quadrupled. 2 years ago, popularity in the transgender category increased by 75%. Last year, at the top website, pornography website, it was number 6. I still can't believe that. I really wanted to be wrong. There is tons of what is called forced feminization pornography, and it is on plenty of social media sites. Reddit, some of you, especially young people, know this stuff. Reddit, Pinterest, Flickr, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, it's called X now, Instagram. Most of this kind of stuff is just enough where it doesn't get flagged or banned or taken down, but some of these sites allow anything, and it is very graphic. Forced feminization pornography, and it goes way deeper than that. And I was trying to figure out, like, how much do I want to share with y'all? How much do I feel comfortable with playing? And this is already uncomfortable for me. I don't know how you feel about it, but it goes a whole lot deeper. At universities like Princeton, UC Berkeley, and Columbia, invited speakers not only talk about transgender pornography, they actively promote it. One lecturer at Berkeley included transgender pornography in his curriculum for his students. Like, here's a link. This is what you need to watch for the class. Transgender activists who are on the front line, these really loud big mouths that are pushing all of this, they will admit that it was this kind of pornography that made them transgender. They said, this is what pushed me into it, and they proudly admit it. So you can be sure that the pornography industry keeps up with the times. They will cater to whatever the demand is, and they will produce more of it. And so the more people watch it, the more money they make. It's all about money, right? And the more a user watches different kinds, they don't want you just watching one kind. They want you watching like 10 different kinds of it, because the more money they will make. And they know all too well that pornography, the nature of pornography is progressive. And those of us, those who have dealt with drug addiction, this is like, duh. This is a big duh. But it's progressive. So the thrill, you got to keep the thrill alive. You got to keep the dopamine spiking when you get this thing. And the more you do it, the less it spikes. And so you got to go more and more and higher and above. And eventually users have to take things to the next level. It's just like a drug. Here is my point, and I'm really talking to the men here. Pornography is actively feminizing men, and the men are clueless about it. They're being used. There is research showing that longtime male users will start to picture themselves as the woman. And then they take it to the extreme. They will actually start to turn themselves into the woman that they see on the screen. It is almost like a hypnotic state. I'm not kidding. This is not a conspiracy theory kind of stuff. And I'm talking about all the way from wearing women's clothes in secret, all the way up to actually getting surgeries done. And the personal stories that are out there where wives are talking about their husbands who have fell into this, and parents talking about their children who have fell, it confirmed that their stories will confirm all of this, and they are endless. The stories are endless. If that doesn't make a man want to quit, I don't know what will. You ain't a man, I guess. Only 0.2% of the U.S. population, now some activists would say, oh, that's much higher than that. Only 0.2% of the U.S. population identify as transgender. Yet the demand and the searches for transgender pornography is skyrocketing. Top 6. What's that tell you? What's that tell you? A preacher friend once told me, and he told me this a long time ago, and so I hope I have remembered it right, and I certainly don't mean to embellish if I am doing it, but he was contacted by a fella who wanted to quit pornography. And the guy's story was that the way he started was just doing normal stuff, right? But soon that wasn't enough, right? The nature of it is progressive. And so he started watching worse and worse things like bestiality and things like that, and a few other weird things. Then he started watching homosexual pornography, and finally he had ended up going out and actually committing adultery with a man. And the guy was as normal as could be. You see, the more taboo it is, the more hypnotic it is to the brain. Where would that fella have gone? Where would it have taken him if he had not reached out for help? Jesus' words could not have been truer when he said, most assuredly, I say to you, whoever commits, the King James is committed, and you get the idea of a continual action, so it's really a practice. Whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. Whoever practices sin is a slave of sin. Boy, no true words have been spoken. That's John 8, verse 34. Fully and completely controlled by it. And if these examples I give you is not proof of that, then tell me why. But thank God, even from this, Jesus Christ can set you free, and I mean free completely. John 8, verse 36. So here's the last one. Those who use pornography are contributing to evil. And I mean evil. Romans chapter 1 and verse 32 says, though knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things, evil sin, are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. Anything that I would do where I knowingly contribute to or endorse or promote some sinful thing is in itself also sinful. We're told to take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, Ephesians 5 and verse 11. Every time an image is viewed or a video is watched, the user, and whether good or bad video, whether it's a Disney happy kid video or it's a pornography video, the user is telling the other side, right, the other side of the video, that they like that picture, that video is liked, and that factors into how much more of that content is produced. That should make sense to us all. Watching pornography actively contributes to one of the most evil, addictive practices the world has ever seen. 1 out of 5 pornographic images is of a child. 1 out of 5? It seems impossible to me that pornography users would not at least accidentally come across this kind of stuff. Between the 2 most popular pornography websites And remember, they push their stuff onto other little sites. But 40% of the scenes involve physical aggression. And that would range from minor, roughness to actual, not just playing it out, but actual rape and torture and things like that. And why all of this disgusting things, or why they're all being uploaded to the internet, is because of user-generated pornography. You see, it isn't just produced out in California, nice little studio somewhere. They call it Porn Valley, like Silicon Valley. They got their own Porn Valley out there. It's not just out there anymore. Anybody can do it. So just up to a year or two ago, anybody with an email address, this is on the biggest site out there, anybody with an email address could just upload pornography. And there was no age check. I think it said something like, are you 18? And you just say, yeah. You just say, yeah. No consent by the people in the videos or the pictures. No reviews about it. No nothing. And so for years, literal crimes were flooding the internet for anybody to see for free, for anyone to download, and then to share it with anybody they want to. And we're not talking about the dark web. Some of y'all know about the dark web. It's like a whole different kind of internet. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the same internet that your child could easily access from any phone, any tablet. There were videos that were found with children as young as 3 years old. 3 years old. Let me tell you a couple stories. There was a 13-year-old girl out of California. She was a straight-A student, never kissed a boy before. She liked this fella who was a year older than her. He talked her into sending him nude pictures and videos of her. Well, sexting, that kind of thing. You know. He sends it to his friends. His friends upload it to a pornography website, the biggest one. All you need is an email. Millions and millions and millions of views we're getting on this girl's pictures and videos. She contacts the website, tries to get them taken down. Of course, they ignore her, and it destroyed her life. She became strung out on drugs, dropped out of school, strung out on drugs, and was homeless. Because of this. Now, her story is kind of good, sort of. From what I understand, she has come back, and she's now suing. She's fine, and well, she's doing better, and she's suing these people for this, which hopefully she wins and puts them out of business. But it's a pipe dream, I suppose. There's another story. 2019, a 15-year-old girl went missing. That's a big problem in this country, trafficking. 15-year-old girl went missing. A year later, her mom receives a tip from someone who was watching a pornography site and saw her daughter on the website. And so they started investigating, and they found this girl in 58 different videos. Some of the videos, I think most of them were monetized. Somebody's making money off of it. Police would go out, they eventually rescue her, find that she had been abused, tortured, drugged, even impregnated, all for money. All for money. When you view pornography, considering all the algorithms that are behind it, I believe that the case can be made that you are unintentionally approving of some of the vilest evils on this planet, as well as promoting some serious crimes and ruining lives. Why would we want to be a part of that? How do you stop this if you're into it? Now, I'm not a counselor, and there's a whole lot more that we could say about this, and maybe this deserves a whole nother lesson, right? How do we get out of it? But I would say, like with many things, prevention is the best medicine. Parents, nowadays, overall, generally speaking, I think are absolute cowards. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. They are cowards. We, as Christian parents, cannot be cowards about this. If your children at some point think they hate you. No, they really don't hate you. But they mutter under their breath, I hate you. Or they'll say they hate you because you're being too strict with who their friends are, or too strict with what they watch, or how limited their screen time is, and things like that. I will say that you're doing it right. You're doing it right. I think at some point your child should probably think, man, I hate my parents, because you're disciplining them. Not because of any abuse or nothing like that, but because you're just simply disciplining them like godly parents should. They'll come out of that, don't worry. Proverbs 22 and verse 3 says, a prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. We are either raising up carefully, wise decision-making children, that would be prudent, it's the idea of prudence, who are going to be able to protect themselves when they're out all by themselves, or we're raising simple children who don't even know better, and they're just going to blindly walk in to sinful living. And who do you think God's going to hold accountable for that? Finally, we need to work towards building better relationships, especially in the home. In the home is where it's got to start. You know, the shame that is associated with this sin is overwhelming. I would say it's far heavier than shame that comes with using drugs or anything like that. And maybe, maybe I'm speaking out of my ignorance here. Maybe I don't know, and I think shame or guilt is like a double-edged sword, right? And so it's good in that it's a sign of a conscience that knows better. Like they know that they shouldn't be doing this. And so they feel this guilt and shame, and that's a good thing because that ought to push us to the right way, right? But also that same time, that powerful feeling of shame, it stops people from seeking help. Well, I don't want to hurt so-and-so, and so I need to keep this to myself. I just need to try to do this myself. Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 17 says that a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. The better relationships we have, the more open that we are able to feel that we can be with each other, the more likely that the help that is needed is going to be sought after. And there are multiple avenues beyond friends, beyond family, beyond church, the church, that are available to get help with this problem. And those things need to be used. And if you need to be pushed in that direction, then please allow me to help push you. I don't know what you think about this. You might be, I would imagine that the older generation who doesn't really get on the computers much, don't know much about it, probably are in the dark about this kind of thing. But this is a monster. And we need every single member of the church to be praying about this. Pray about this specific thing. And pray that, whatever your prayer is, pray that God's will be done in getting people out of this, and getting this sin and evil destroyed, like stomped out completely, because that's what we need to happen. Do you need help with this? Is someone listening to me who needs help with this? I want you to reach out, because it is a sin. I fully expect no one to come forward with this. The shame is, I get it. But I would expect someone who wants to go to heaven and who's finally ready to get this over with, to talk to me privately, to text me, to call me, to reach out to me, or to anybody they feel they need to reach out to. The closest person to you, reach out to them and say something. Can't do it alone. Can't do it alone. Now, if you're not a Christian, of course, I'll want you to obey the gospel. Without Christ, we're really no better off. We're going if I'm lost in my sins, no matter what they are, I'm going to the same place as these people who are doing this and pushing this and promoting it. The same place. What? I'd rather go to heaven. and I know you would too. So I want you to obey the gospel, put your Lord on in baptism, and be faithful to him. Let me end with this, and we'll stand and sing. Psalm 32 and verse 3. When I kept silent, my bones grew old through my groaning all the day long. For day and night your hand, God, was heavy upon me. My vitality was turned into the drought of summer. I acknowledged my sin to you, and my iniquity I have not hidden. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you, God, forgave the iniquity of my sin. I want you to be able to say that. Let's stand and let's sing together.